Yeah, exactly.
Please get stand for the Mayor of Thetford, Councillor Mike Brindle.
Thank you, colleagues. Please be seated. If you wish to remove your hat, please do so. And I welcome the Reverend Matt Houghton, who will say prayers, colleagues.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let us pray. God of justice and mercy, we thank you for the gift of life and the opportunity to serve the people of our town. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Help us to speak with charity and restraint. Lord Jesus Christ, you modelled for us that spirit of service. Remind us that we are stewards of your authority. Guide us to be people who lead your people and those in need especially. Help us see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us, and to treat all persons, no matter how weak or poor, with the reverence your creation deserves. And finally, Father, renew us with the strength of your presence and the joy of helping to build a community worthy of the human person. We ask this, confident in your goodness and your love. Amen.
Colleagues and members of the public, may I welcome you all and say a word about why Matt Houghton is here. You recall that our Mayor's chaplain was Reverend Ken Nichols. Ken decided that he and his wife had to move house. They moved a few days ago to Haverhill, and although he was very keen to come for a last swan song or last performance, I think it would have been unfair to ask him to come back one evening when he's in the chaotic situation of living out of a series of boxes. So thanks very much to Ken for what he did. Can I, on your behalf, welcome Reverend Matt Houghton, who is Vicar at Cloverfield, who has very kindly agreed to become the Mayor's chaplain, and you heard him for the first time here this evening. And we now move to the item above the agenda, which is the 15-minute open forum. Are there any questions, please? If there are no questions, we have a question. Yes, Councillor.
My name's Mr. Taylor, and I live in Priory Ward. I just want to ask the councillors if they're aware that in high courts, 22 countries, the last one being Spain, in those countries, all COVID fines issued during lockdown are cancelled. This is because the governments in those countries were not able to provide evidence of the COVID-19. This evidence has a technical term, and it's called the isolation. COVID-19 has never been isolated, and therefore it or any variant at the minute cannot be proven. Please check out everything I'm saying. However, notwithstanding this information, some politicians and people in authority all across Europe are calling for the strictest sanctions against the unjabbed population, and they are even recommending that they are not to be allowed into the supermarkets to shop. My question from some concerned people in my area that I represent is, if this madness does manage to take hold here in England, does the council, at all 3 levels of responsibility, have a plan to feed and provide healthcare to the people in the community that cannot and will not take the experimental job?
Thank you very much. I didn't detect a particular question, but if there's anyone who wishes to respond to that, then you have the opportunity now.
I would just say that again, Mr. Chairman.
I thought you
Some
finished,
politicians
Councillor.
across Europe are calling for the unjust to be not allowed into shops to be able to buy food. They're also being refused healthcare when they need it. If that takes place here, do we have a plan? Do you have a plan as councillors to deal with that, or will they just be barred? That is the question I've been asked to find out tonight.
I think you'll be aware, Councillor, that if you had wished to have an answer to your question, you would have submitted your question in advance in writing so that councillors and staff could consider what you have said. As you've not done that, there is no requirement on this council or any councillor to contribute a comment unless they wish to do so, which I'm happy to invite them to do so. Is there anyone, colleagues, who wish to say something? We have the Town Clerk and Councillor Brain, please. Take you first.
Last time, Councillor Taylor, the emergency response was organised by Norfolk County Council and they were the single point of contact. And unless, as far as I know, that arrangement is still extant. So the answer to your question would be the emergency planning still lies within Norfolk County Council.
Councillor Brain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to say exactly the same thing. All emergency welfare is a county matter. It's way above the pay grade of this parish council. It is not something that we can have anything to do with at all. I can only express to the councillor that if he's that concerned that the laws in this land are being so bad, as he has said, Spain, France, wherever the other list of places were that are not doing it, I suggest perhaps you go and live in one of those countries and then you can be and have the exact laws that you want. But as far as I'm concerned, this is a parish council and that was way above my pay grade. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions, please? Yes, please. I'll take this one first, please.
I would like to thank the Town Council for the provision of a new facility in the town, which is the Guildhall Tea Room. It's absolutely excellent place. It's warm, it's friendly, it's comfortable, and most of all, it provides most amazing cakes. Now, I belong to a generation that actually doesn't engage all that much with Facebook, and a number of my friends would love to know about this thing. I just wonder, is it possible to produce a flyer that would let people know what, at the moment it's almost, because of the car park, it's sort of a hidden gem. So if we were able to have a flyer, it would be very much able to be known more widely. Thank you very much.
Do you wish to comment on that?
I will pass your suggestion to the Grand Manager.
Thank you very much. I hope you accept that. Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor, for your helpful assistance. Do you have a question?
Hi, my name's Jeff Whelan. Question I've got concern with about the first 2 vaccines that were administered in the UK and around the world. Obviously, we were led to believe this was our saviour, but it looks, as we well know, that you can contract the virus still and spread it. How do we know that the boosters are going to do the job that supposedly the first 2 vaccines should have done?
Thank you. Town Clerk.
Obviously, we at this level don't have that type of information. But again, if I direct you to Norfolk County Council and the head of public health there, if you contact them directly, as we have done previously for Councillor Taylor, I'm sure that they can answer your questions much more fully than we could ever try to attempt to, and they will be in a much better position to allay your concerns.
Thank you very much. Councillor Taylor.
I just wondered if any of the county councillors are on the table tonight like to say anything about the questions we're asking, rather than obfuscating and saying that we'll deal with it at Norfolk, because we can't get to Norfolk. And I don't think they're going to answer any questions anyway. So would the Norfolk County councillors like to say anything, or will we be silent?
Any councillor wish to add? Councillor Jeremy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Taylor, for your questions. I'm not an expert. You and I have equal access to the news and the internet to get statistics and information, and obviously we come to different conclusions as to what that suggests. There was one that I found very interesting personally, which was for the first 6 months of this year, there was just over 51,000 deaths from coronavirus. And of all of those deaths, 640 of them were in people that were fully vaccinated, which says to me that there's a significantly better survival rate if you've had the vaccine than if you haven't. And that's all the evidence I need, frankly, to encourage me to have both jabs and to go and get the booster. If that's not sufficient encouragement for you, then that's your choice at the end of the day, and in this country it still is a choice, and I would agree with your sentiment at least that choice is important in that regard. If I may, while speaking, Mr. Mayor, the last couple of weeks I've had concern to travel the length and breadth of the primary ward. I've been delivering an autumn newsletter that wrapped up a significant number of steps. It may be sort of relevant or not, but I will say if Councillor Taylor put as much effort into dealing with issues on his ward as he does to spreading concerns about COVID, there'd be less issues in his ward.
Mr. Chairman, we have Councillor
Just hold on a minute, please. I will let you ask one more question, that the time is not ready out. But bear in mind that, as I said before, if your comments and questions come verbally, there's no requirement on us to deal with them, even if we thought we were the appropriate body to be asking about these questions. Having said that, please carry on.
It's not a question, Mr. Chairman. I'm just asking if we can have county councillors answer them rightly.
Happy to do so.
Yeah? Is it real? But also, you could also just take it on the video recording.
Are there any more questions? If not, I'll ask us to move to the next item, which in fact is the first item, so welcome you now to the agenda. Item 565, declarations of any disclosable pecuniary interests. If you wish to make them later at an appropriate time, you may do so, or you may do so now. Are there any, please? And if not, silence being eloquent. 566, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
I have apologies from Councillors Robinson and Tunt.
Thank you very much. Going on to item 567, the minutes. We ask colleagues to confirm the minutes of the full council meeting held on the 26th of October 2021, excepting of course items that were dealt with below the line. And we're asked to confirm that there is a true record, and therefore you have to be satisfied, colleagues, that they are accurate. So if I can ask you to either look at the screen, or you may have a page of your own. Are there any comments on the first items? And we're moving on. Unfortunately, we haven't necessarily got the same pages, but if, I'm in a paper copy. I'm on page 3 now, which is item 475. Anything up to there, colleagues? If not, I'll invite you to go to page 2, item 479. Nothing there, okay. As far as item 482, and as there's no response, finishing on item 485. Not hearing anything, I will now be in a position, I hope, colleagues, with your support, to sign these minutes as a true record. Are we in agreement?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much indeed. We move on to item 568, which is committee minutes, starting with heritage and town events. Can I have a report on that, please? So I'm going to present the minutes. Yes, Deputy Mayor would like to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to present the unconfirmed minutes of the Heritage and Town Events Committee meeting on Monday the 1st of November. There are no recommendations. I beg leave to move minutes.
All happy with that? Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. There is, sorry, my apologies. Jenny.
Yeah, it's got the apologies for absence. I thought I'd sent them in because that was the day of my mother's funeral. I know I did send it in because I had a comment back from the Deputy Mayor, so...
Can we amend those?
I'm sure you're
Yeah,
right.
can we amend those minutes, please? Yes, brilliant.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, happy with that, in which case we'll proceed to the next council committee meeting, personnel. Will this be Councillor Brain?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I beg leave to present the minutes of the personnel meeting held on Tuesday the 5th of October. There are resolved matters on page 1 and a recommendation on page 2. The recommendation on page 2 reads that we recommend that all meetings to be held in the King's House with all relevant COVID precautions taken. All full council meetings to be televised, live streamed. It's not the telly really, is it? It's live streamed. And all committee meetings to be recorded. We looked at this from all points of staffing and costs and things, and we felt that this was the better way of proceeding, and the fact that the council chamber, now it's been revamped, gives us room to be almost as spaced as in here, and it also gives us the benefit of opening windows and having fresh air and circulation. So that was the recommendation we are putting forward.
Thank you for putting it forward. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, please.
I have two questions. Excuse me, he lost the chair. Firstly, I just wondered if there was going to be any revision of this in light of the recent news and announcements on COVID. And secondly, just a clarification where it says all committee meetings to be recorded. Is that video and sound? Or just sound? Video and sound.
At the moment, there is no guidance from us to take any more restrictions that are currently in place. However, masks, sanitisers will be available, and if people choose that they want to have a bit more distance or to be masked or use hand sanitiser, then they are welcome to do so, and then we'll be supplies of those in the room.
So,
Yes, please carry on.
well, I would now put that forward as a proposal, Mr. Mayor.
Are we happy to accept that proposal?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. We have a second. Should that be necessary? All in favour, please. Okay, thank you very much. Dennis, are you voting, or you want to say something? Sorry.
No, I thought you called for a vote then.
I did
Just done
indeed.
it. Yes.
I was absolutely.
I was still up. Yeah, sorry.
Councillor Harvey has his hand up.
I was voting as well.
Yeah, we were voting together.
Okay, thank you for your enthusiasm.
Even at the same time.
Yeah.
Anyone
That's
against?
great. Would you like to attempt to carry on, please?
Would you like to ask for anybody against? Just to make sure. Right, thank you very much.
Oh,
Yes, I was going to say.
I
I am abstaining.
Right, all abstain. Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you.
very much. Sorry, I have to be taught the job regularly now. So we didn't have any againsts, but we did have an abstention.
Yeah, so
Thank you very much.
the
Would you like to
recommendation,
carry on,
yes,
Lord?
the recommendation was passed, and now I would like to present these minutes for passing as well. May we move the minutes?
So moved.
Are these minutes accepted, colleagues? They
Yes.
are. Thank you for your toleration. So we moved on to. I think it's amenities, despite what I've just about seen.
Yes, there's just an X at the bottom of the page.
It's odd to have the title at the bottom of the page. It takes me a while to work out where I am. So amenities, Mr. Chairman, the Chairman of Amenities, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Very happy to present the minutes from the amenities meeting held on Wednesday, the 3rd of November. There are no recommendations. It's all resolved business, and therefore move the minutes, please.
They are quite lengthy. Are there any comments or questions on the Amenities Committee minutes, please? If not, are you happy to accept these minutes, colleagues?
So moved.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So we move on to venues and communications, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to present the minutes of the Venues Communications meeting of the Wednesday, 10th of November. There is one page and there is one resolved matter. It was a brief meeting, as you'll probably gather. I thank for those two others who did attend, who were able to be quorate. So I move the minutes.
Thank you. Again, unless there are any comments or questions, not seeing any, are these minutes acceptable again, please?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Cemetery Committee, please. Hadn't got a rush to lead on the Cemetery Committee.
I'm sorry, I didn't realise
Thank
I'd
you,
had
Councillor
one. I thought we'd do. Well, I'm pleased to present the committee meeting of the Cemetery Committee on the 11th of the 10th, was it? 11th of the 11th. And there are no recommendations.
Thank you very much. So with that very helpful final comment, can I invite you colleagues again to agree these minutes?
Yes, agreed.
Happy with those? Okay. We move on to Finance Committee. The Deputy Mayor might care to make a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I beg leave to present the unconfirmed minutes of the meeting of the Finance Committee held on Tuesday, 23rd of November. There are 3 recommendations in total, one of which will be dealt with under this meeting's agenda item 557. If I take you to page 1, the first recommendation is under 55521, which is the approval of payments, and the recommendation that Thetford Town Council approve the making of the payments found in the first appendix A to E, please.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any comments, please? In which case, without which we'll move straight to a vote.
Yep.
Willing to accept that? Thank you very much for accepting that recommendation. Please carry on.
So as mentioned, the second recommendation will be dealt with under a further agenda item on this meeting. And then the final recommendation is under 55821, which is the approval of the internal audit tender. That the tender be recommended for approval by full council and that the tenderer's daily rate of £460 be approved, with the time spent on the internal audit derived from the annual internal audit coverage plan.
I'll second that recommendation.
Very kind. Thank you very much indeed. Again, if there are no comments, we'll move straight to a vote. So can we accept that recommendation, please? Thank you very much again, colleagues. Finish off.
So that finishes off on page 2. There are a number of appendices which I won't take you through. So move minutes.
Thank you very much indeed. Everyone accept the minutes of Finance Committee?
Yep, approved.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to 569 now.
Yeah.
Okay, we are ready to move on to item 569. Colleagues, you've had a list of comments from me. I don't need to spend time on those. I would like to draw your attention to the review I've done of car parking in Thetford. I don't want to spend too long on this, but I do need to make it meaningful to you. I collated the evidence of what I found, and I haven't given you that, but it's available to anyone who would like it. There are, I have to warn you, at least 6 pages of it. And then we come to the draft summary, and what I'm going to do is to concentrate, if we're able to go to the top of it. So we've got the title of the item, which is Car Parking in Thetford Draft 3. That's it, lovely. If I just draw your attention to the 2 top roads as I've mentioned, so I can explain what happened. So if you look at Bury Road, for example, the first one, you'll see that the number of parking spaces is given and the number of disabled spaces are given, 35 and 1 respectively. And then the next line is recording, so that's a number of times that I checked how many cars were parked in there and whether there were any spaces. So I only recorded it once, and the reason is that Bury Road is not particularly near the town centre and it's rarely if ever full. So I concentrated on those car parks that might be full or town centre or more likely to be causing concern to the public. So we move to the second example. Those are the only 2 examples I'll take. The second example is Cage Lane. There are 25 spaces and 1 disabled space. I checked 38 times in the period of about 3 weeks, perhaps a little more, from Wednesday the 27th of October when I started. So on 38 occasions I looked at Cage Lane and counted the number of times when the car park was full and the number of times when there were vacancies in it. You'll see that, but I also chose the busiest times of day as far as I could. And there were 27 times when there were vacancies and 11 times when the car park called Cage Lane was full. I did that for all the other car parks listed, so you've got a list of the car parks in Thetford, got a list of the number of spaces, a list of the number of disabled spaces, the number of times I visited that car park, the number of times I found vacancies, and the number of times I found that car park to be full. You'll see that, for example, if you look at the full column, 6 car parks were sometimes full. So, for example, Cage Lane was full 11 times, Earl Street was full 9 times. And the other car parks were never full in the period in which I recorded the evidence. Secondly, if you go back halfway down the page to the word days, can we move up the screen a little bit, please? Okay, the word days is appearing. So this is the number of times I made a recording on each day. So, for example, on a Monday, I recorded 21 times, and on 17 of those times, there were vacancies. And you'll see that the same applies, the numbers apply, as you can see. So, 17 times were vacancies, 4 times there were. I found a car park that was full. You'll see that the most difficult days are Tuesdays, which you'd expect. So on 12 occasions, I found the car park full on a Tuesday. You'd expect that because of the market. The second commonest day, in fact, was Friday. And I'll come back to Friday in a moment briefly. and then third equal was Saturday. I realise now that the reason why Saturday looks better than Tuesday is because the rush on a Saturday appears to finish earlier than it does on a Tuesday or indeed a Friday, and I focus too much of my time on the afternoon. So those are the days, and then also I've collated under the heading of hours, so the number of times I've checked car parks between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock or 8 and 8:55 is 9 times. There was never a full car park. The number of times I checked a car park between 3 o'clock and 3:55, the bottom of the list, was 24 times, and there was never a full car park. So you can see that the pressure on the car parks is looking at the last column, and the pressure on the car parks is greatest between 11 o'clock and about 1 o'clock. I'll come back to that very briefly in a moment, but pressing on to the next item, this is the aim. When we started discussing what to be the future of the market square, it seemed to me that we lacked a great deal of actual factual information. We were apparently making decisions on hearsay and on guesswork. So I wanted to try and find what information I could that was reliable, and that's what we've been presented with. Moving down to the next item, which is heading Note. It's worth pointing out that I only looked at car parks. I didn't look at on-road parking, so that's also available. And it's also worth pointing out that Tanner Street North is closed at the moment. That's a car park with 54 spaces. It's approaching 10% of the total spaces in our town. So quite a significant number are lost because of the COVID testing site. There are also car parks like the station, Wilkinson's, which I did check once, and the supermarket. So we have a significant number of car parks in the town. And there are one or two short-term spaces, such as Wells Street. If you look at conclusions, what I've been able to show is that if you pick the most difficult times, there is still 3/4 of the car parks are not full. But if you pick the most difficult times, if I'd gone out at midnight, every car park would not be full. If I'd gone out at 4 in the afternoon, every car park would not be full. I deliberately chose the busiest times, and during those busiest times, 3/4 of the car parks had spaces. There is a particular issue with disabled spaces. The smaller the car park, the more likely it is to be full. If you have 2 disabled spaces in a car park, it only needs 2 cars to come and it's full. So although there are always disabled spaces available around the town, it's quite difficult for a disabled driver to guess in advance which is the best place to go to be certain of finding a space. There is an issue about disabled parking, and I think we have to consider that we should be looking at it or pressurising the car parking authority, which is of course Rector Council, to do something about it. What I'm going to suggest is contained at the end where it says proposals, which is that I carry out a further survey as soon as Tanner Street North is returned to use. I had originally expected that could have happened as early as the 2nd of January. I now suspect it won't happen then. Because I think with the additional 54 spaces, we may all find that far fewer car parks get full at all often. I think there is a concern about disabled spaces, as I said, and it would be interesting to know whether Brecon are prepared to consider providing time-limited parking in the most popular car parks, which are St Giles and Earl Street. You can understand why they're the most popular. So there is an issue about time-limited parking, which is something that Brecon have looked at in another town. And it may be that this evidence would help them decide that we should do that here. Colleagues, I don't ask you to make a decision, you weren't asked to make a decision, but I do think that when we write up our proposals for consultation with the public, or when we talk to the public, we ought to be aware, as far as possible, of this factual information. And I'll come back to that if we do discuss the issue of the car parking, but I think we can make a better decision if we know what we're talking about. And I hope you find that, although it's fairly dull stuff, it is nonetheless important if we're going to get right the future of our car parks and our market square. Thank you for your toleration. I was going to welcome Lady Fisher, who's just rather quietly and modestly joined the group of people attending. So you are also welcome, as all members of the public and the two councillors, pardon me, also are. No, I've been offered water. I think what I need to do is make sure that other people do more of the speaking. So I will endeavour to do that for the rest of the meeting. I've now probably mixed up my papers fairly thoroughly, but I'm going to suggest that. Have we got that on the agenda? Okay, so do I have to close the meeting?
No, I think you can allow Lady Fisher into
Lady Fisher, would you be able to do your presentation now? I know it's actually probably a good bit later than I suggested, so perhaps we take it now if we can.
That's good.
Just a brief pause.
you know, to sort of then the microphones will pick you up where you are.
Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, lovely to see so many of you. See so many familiar faces as well. And I'm very proud to be here today representing Her Majesty the Queen, presenting this plaque to the Thetford Town Council. This plaque, which is unique to Norfolk, represents the challenging time of the COVID era when communities came together to help each other, and I know that Thetford did their share. I mean, I know really Thetford people did really quite a lot for their neighbours. Well done to all those who reached out to each other, and I share in your sadness over those whom we lost or whose lives changed irrevocably. The plaque was designed by Ruby Douglas from Wyndham, and the wording was taken from the 19th century Harriet Martineau, the first female sociologist, and was commissioned by our Lord Lieutenant Lady Dammit and funded by local sponsorship. It is a unique Norfolk symbol of a challenging time.
Thank you very much indeed. Well done. Thank you. What you want.
Maybe if you're there, I can.
Maybe we could ask Tom to step forward and take a photograph if that helps. Because he's good at that sort of stuff. So we don't want him taking it.
Yeah, so if we can get you both to come just here.
Sorry to interrupt you on your public business.
Lady Fisher, if you want to stand there as well and get a picture prepared.
I think that's okay.
That's fine. If you want to go there as well, we can get you as well.
You thought you were going to get out of a photograph, lady. No.
If you want to stand,
Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate that you've come and that we should present it. We're very grateful.
it's lovely to be here.
We're delighted to have you. Anytime.
Do you want to join for a picture as well? If you want to both come through here.
If you get in the middle.
Just about.
There you go. She's not going to get away with hiding up this time. Okay. She comes here so very, very infrequently, and you should be here more often.
I don't need to get into trouble.
Right, and 3, 2, 1. And again. Okay, that's all good.
I go check my
Just to pause for a moment, colleagues, before we go on to 570. Okay, item 570, Town Council representatives on other bodies. I'm going to invite this by going around the room. I think unusually I'll start just making a brief comment on behalf of the trustees of the Charles Burrows Centre, who Dennis and I represent. I'm very pleased to hear, to know, though I missed it myself, I think I blinked, that there was a brief cameo on Look East yesterday.
Yes, there was.
But in addition to that, Charles Burrows Centre was a focus organisation of the annual National Convention for a national organisation that looks after similar organisations to CBC called Locality. And there was a video article which is a 13.5-minute overview of the Charles Burrows Centre. You have a chance to see it if you wish, and I can give you the YouTube index if you would like to see it, or I can send it around if people want to see it. It's worth seeing. Very professional, very positive, and a good opportunity to get a fairly brief snapshot, but a meaningful snapshot because it's long enough, of what Charles Burrows Centre does, which would take the place of any visits that you might wish to make. So delighted to be able to report publicly on behalf of something which, I'll remind you again, we started. Having said that, I'm going to go round in order. So, Deputy Mayor, have you got any items to add to this item, please?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, in terms of the Safer Thetford Action Group, their next closed meeting is scheduled for the 8th of December. And I'm going to put my final plug in for the Thetford Music Project showcases, which are booked for Sunday 12th of December. And if you haven't got your tickets yet, Leaping Hair still are selling them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Knight, Jamie, Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think so, because I think Councillor Jeremy's baffled me, because he's put about the Greater Thetford Board pre-meeting in the beginning of November, and I thought we had the actual meeting in October, which I was there. But if it was after the pre-meeting, I think we mentioned last time that Thetford were the questions that were asked at planning were all asked at the Greater Thetford, and they all responded, and it is all being looked at. And for what I consider a change, because I've been involved with the Greater Thetford Partnership since it was called that which shall be unnamed, and they really do now actually listen to what this council actually asks, and they do look for responses, and I have seen that there is some great work being done on one of our main concerns, which is the A11, and that's now really coming to fruition and is looking as if they have suddenly realised that if you want to go from London to anywhere in East Anglia, you come through Thetford, and you normally use the A11. So it's time, and they are now looking at funding and making that road better. and that is something that this council has been asking the Greater Thetford to look at and to make sure their voice is heard, and I would like to report back that they are doing so.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cannon?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Crawford?
Yeah, just a little bit more about the Charlesborough Centre. It was really good to see it on television yesterday, but we had the more mundane things of a finance committee meeting we had to attend for it, and the finances for the Charlesborough Centre are reasonably good, so that's always handy to know. And we had our AGM also, which was well attended, so that's just my little bits for it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harvey?
I've not had any other bodies.
Councillor Taylor?
It may be of interest to some of you, but especially to some of the public, but I was recently requested as a councillor to attend a weekend arranged by a group called the Guardians 300, which is a group of veterans which have set up due to concerns, and they asked me as a councillor to attend a course up near Norwich. There was 2 courses run over 2 days. The first one, it was quite intriguing. It was called the Sovereign Beings course. And what this did, it taught common law rights, the difference between common law, God's law, admiralty law, which is the law of the sea. It taught you how to recognise our rights and where they come from, types of jurisdictions, and it also gave you a familiarisation of contract law. And for what they gave you in a day, it's quite intriguing, and I would say to any councillor, if you could get on the course, get on it. The second course was called the Common Law Constable course, and this trained you in how to attend incidents and advise on rights when council employees, bailiffs and police officers are involved. They also trained you how to protect members and their property by any lawful means if you are involved in a skirmish with them people. The takeaway from the course is that the people who had attended have been asked to be ready to take part in common law courts when they are set up and needed. Very, very intriguing weekend, and I would commend anybody to ask me more questions so that I don't bore you too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. I think you'd rather sneak that in under the radar, but we'll carry on anyway. Councillor Hollis?
I'm not on any other
Councillor Burrito?
I've never voiced.
Councillor Hutchins? And back to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your indulgence on that. Dennis and I attended a recent meeting of Thetford Municipal and United Charities, where, for those of you who don't know, they are the combined body that looks after almshouses, the Sir Joseph Williamson Charity for the Poor and the Sir Joseph Williamson Charity for Apprenticeships. So that gives you an idea of the age of those particular organisations. Thankfully, I do bring down the average age a little bit. Within that, in the past, through the one of the Sir Joseph Williamson charities, we've supported the energy bank that used to be housed at Thetford Food Bank, and have been able to support them in the establishment of an energy bank, which helps people pay for basically the lecky and the gas, in a time of crisis. This year, we've been asked to place that support on pause, so we looked around for some other options, and we're really delighted that we've been able to support the Borough Shop at the CBC in terms of 2 donations, one to support the welfare and well-being in terms of Operation Christmas Cheer, as we've now adopted it, so enabling those people who may not be able to afford a couple of those little luxuries over the Christmas period. And also to reinforce their work, we've also donated some money to help support the day-to-day running of that shop. So thanks to Councillor Crawford who helped get that through. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And now, colleagues, on to 571. Reports from county and district councillors. I've got, sorry, come back to Jennifer.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah, of course you can.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is that open to all residents in Thetford, or is it just certain wards?
My understanding that access is now available to all residents in Thetford.
Okay, thank you.
You can say, she can say quite right too. Okay, reports from county and district councils. Can I ask county and district councils who wish to speak just to raise a hand slightly so I can gauge where the interest and commitment is? I'm going to start at the far and then work backwards. So, Councillor Harvey, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You'll have to forgive me, I'm coming from Manford. I went training at Brecon in early November for personal safety for councillors, which the town clerk was really good enough to forward all the slides to all the members. We were also supposed to have the county lines training course, but that was cancelled because the police were busy chasing people who were smuggling drugs into Norfolk. So, that's my time now. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things that I would like to mention at this point. Normally, I always feel that this particular agenda item is for county and district to report on how it is affecting Thetford, not particularly what else is sort of going on. But I attended a white ribbon flag raising day on Tuesday, and I felt then it was something that I really did need to bring to the attention of this council, although it wasn't a specific Thetford thing. It really does concern the people of Thetford. White Ribbon Day is domestic abuse. It is trying to make it more public and more acceptable to talk about and to show that this is going on within our community. And I can assure you, if you look at the figures, it will be happening in Thetford as much as it is anywhere else. So I felt that I should bring this because it's this 16 days. This 16 days is the 16 days of awareness. And I would say to anybody, if you're talking to neighbours and friends and people, and you hear them say things that you feel are not quite right, just listen a little bit more. They may be wanting to talk to you, and don't sort of hide away from it, because it is one of those things that, especially in rural areas like this, it's very difficult to get out of, and you feel very alone when it's happening. And I think that it is this awareness. So I just wanted to mention that over the next 16 days, this is what this white ribbon is for. We have a couple of very good charities with, I always want to call them Daisy Chain, but they're actually Daisy Project. And one of the things that they try to get across, and whenever they speak about it, is they never talk about victims of domestic abuse. They are there to look after survivors of domestic abuse. And I would just like to say that when you listen to people, you may well hear of victims. Our job is to make them victims into survivors by listening and making sure that if it's at all possible, we're there to help. So that's, you know, the really serious bit about White Ribbon Day, and I felt I should mention it. I have one other thing that I am doing on behalf of Brecon in Thetford, which is really terrifying me. Apparently, on Saturday, the 11th of December, I believe, I will be at the Charles Burrell Centre, where they want me to wrap things or box things for their appeal, and to help get these boxes put together and delivered out and there is going to be a day there where the mayor is going to be there, and we are going to do this putting together of these boxes. And I must admit, I'm absolutely terrified, because if anybody wants me to wrap anything, I'm afraid they've had it. It's a well-known fact in my house that you always know which present Roy bought, because it's the one that looks as if that should have been straight in the rubbish. So please, Mr. Mayor, I'm looking forward to coming, and it's a great cause that we're doing, but don't ask me to wrap anything. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor, and I assure you that we're very happy to see you acting as a tea boy in order to avoid a skill that you get to acquire. Interesting that you spent a life in the retail trade, and that's why your goods always came unwrapped, I suppose.
Very difficult to wrap a washing machine.
Councillor Jeremy, you provided us with some notes. Are you going to fill those out in some way?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A word of advice for Roy. The most important job when wrapping presents is finding the end of the sellotape. So if you can manage that, you'll be on to a win.
Right.
I've been able to circulate a brief written report to councillors, and I think Chris normally sticks it in the minutes as well, but it's available online if anyone wants to have a look. I shan't go through them all, but there's just two that I do want to particularly mention. On the 4th of November, I had a meeting with Breckland officers about fly tipping, and I know some other Breckland members have had the opportunity to meet with them as well. We've seen a real sea change at Breckland over the last few years when it comes to prosecutions for fly tipping, which I think is to be commended. I don't know of the statistics, but a significant number of those prosecutions are from fly tips that take place in Thetford. Not always Thetford people that are prosecuted, but we have our fair share of fly tipping, and I think the message is getting out there now that there is a very serious risk of prosecution, and some of the fines are quite hefty. The other side of that is around education, and that was the purpose of my meeting on the 4th of November. I can't say hand on heart that I know exactly, even as a councillor, what you can and can't take to the tip and how much it costs. Frankly, it's a mystery to me, and sometimes I go up there and they say, no, that would be this much. I think, oh my God. We have got to make it clearer the legitimate ways for people to dispose of rubbish at the tip, or whether you use eBay or Gumtree or all sorts of bits and pieces. I had reason to go to the shop at the reuse centre at the tip, and I was amazed what was in there. I didn't even know they sell compost bins, and this sort of information we need to be getting out there. So I'm really pleased that, having now got the prosecution side of it sorted and working well, Breckland are now moving to an education phase. They are going to be particularly targeting the Abbey estate as a trial. Better to start in one specific area and make an awful lot of awareness in that area, and then roll it out across the rest of Thetford. So that work is taking place. I don't have any timescales at the moment, but they have somebody dedicated working on it, so I'm really encouraged by that. And I'm sure as soon as information becomes available, they'll make it known to other councillors. The other thing is around street furniture, and massive thanks to the town council staff who have been busily cleaning various bits of street furniture, bins and benches that I keep reporting to them. Partly as chair of amenities, but also just as a councillor. If members find dirty street signs, fly tipping, broken bins, benches, anything like that, it's so important to report it. On average, I would say probably about 80% of the street scene type issues that I report get actioned very, very quickly, sometimes within days, sometimes within weeks, whether that's Norfolk, Flagship, Breckland, Town Council, anyone else I've forgotten. The main reason these things aren't done is because nobody reports them. We all drive past these things and think it's somebody's job to report them. A really good example is Brenda tackled me at the Remembrance Parade and said, what are we going to do about these fly posting on the bottom of Station Road? And I thought, I don't know, Brenda, maybe somebody's reporting them or not, I have no idea. So I did report them, and Breckland have come out and removed all of the signs from the bottom of Station Road. I assume it was them. They've just disappeared after a couple of days of me reporting them, maybe, but actually Breckland tell me it was them. So just a bit of a plea really, partly for Town Council to protect our own street scene assets, if you like, bins and whatnot, but also some of the other bits and pieces. We can collectively make the town look an awful lot better by these relatively minor issues, but collectively they make a big difference. So I've had a bit of a, as you can see by a couple of the photos on the back, new signs at Ripon Way, for example. This is a bit of a plea to everybody about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll take the Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Dowling's turn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on the Norfolk County Council front, the Norfolk County Council budget consultation is underway with the strategy Better Together for Norfolk at its heart. This is accessible via the website, and for those who do not have online access or are unable to respond to it online, there are other options, and obviously I'll urge residents to get in contact and engage with this important consultation. There has been a speed survey undertaken in response to the objection that was received by Norfolk County Council in relation to the 30 Thetford project, and we await feedback on the results of that and what our options may be. In my capacity as Member Champion for Equalities, it's really glad to hear what Councillor Brain was saying, because we're going to cover that as well. I recently took part in a roundtable on domestic abuse, which was hosted by George Freeman MP. Sadly, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men have experienced domestic abuse, and sadly, 22% of all reported crime in Norfolk is related to domestic abuse. NIDAS, which is the Norfolk Integrated Domestic Abuse Service, provides one point of contact county-wide, connecting with the other services. It's being led by the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner and is supported by Norfolk County Council and others, and has a firm focus on the survivors and their families. You may have seen the press releases at the end of last month regarding it. On the Brecon front, I'm really pleased to say that the lighting on Button Island has now been completed. It really enhances the area and makes it safer for residents now the nights are drawing in. I'm looking forward to the next snowfall, because it will look very much like Narnia, because they are, in true Thetford style, the heritage style lamps. The Breckland Reindeer Trail has been launched across the 5 market towns, and residents are asked to help Father Christmas to find his lost reindeer in local high streets, shops and locations. Entry forms can be downloaded, as always, on websites, or found in the participating locations, and 5 lucky helpers will win a hamper of prizes from local shops. Papers have today been published for the forthcoming Brecon Council meeting next week, and there is an item on the agenda regarding the Riversdale Centre that will probably be of interest to you all, so I suggest you perhaps take a look. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Do you want to ask a question? Please.
You've changed my tilt there slightly. Am I allowed to ask a question?
Oh, sorry, are you, the mayor's just
Well,
invited you to.
Him on the. Am I? Are we allowed to ask questions at this point?
About the report. The mayor's just invited you to do so.
No, I want to ask the Breckland representative a question.
If you want to ask a question of any of the representatives, please do so.
So I was going to bring it up. It's becoming a habit now, a point of order, because the way the agenda's running at the minute, it looks like you can't ask a question. You can ask a question next only if it's written. Have I got that wrong?
No, I have sent emails out clarifying that to all councillors. The reason for that is that our members do not sit on all the committees within those 2 tiers of council, and therefore are not in a position to answer questions that are dealt with those committees, possibly to the depth of knowledge that you are after. Therefore, if you submit
You're presuming the question
therefore, if you submit questions about committees that we know that they're not on, we will have time to actually speak to the officers at those councils and get the answers to the questions.
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, my apologies. I am a working man, and this year, if I don't get my job done, Father Christmas won't be arriving. I have no time to do anything. I can't facilitate what the clerk's asking, sit down and find time to write questions. I follow the sound of the guns, and under democracy I come in here, listen to the Breckland councillors, listen to the Norfolk County councillors, and then hopefully ask them a question on behalf of my residents. Now, the last time I came to a town council meeting, I did talk about the potential for corruption because I felt I was getting closed down and questions were not being allowed to be asked. I get the feeling from the clerk again that she's closing down every avenue and potentially I don't want to smell corruption. All I want to do is, as I have done every time I've come in here until recently, is ask my Breckland and County Council representatives a question. If they don't know the answer because it's because of a particular committee, I can live with that. But let's go with the question first. Could I ask a question, please?
I think you'll find that that agenda item wasn't requested by me, that was requested by Councillor Mark Robinson as a way for us to facilitate fuller questions within the bounds of the meeting for any questions that were posed before. So actually we're going for more information as opposed to less.
I'll just reiterate again for you, Town Clerk, who didn't probably hear me, I'm a working man and I have no time. I have no time to bring in written questions for you prior to this meeting. I have no time to email. I am working.
Or WhatsApp me. You WhatsApp me a lot, so just send it on there.
I don't have a phone with WhatsApp on.
Well, it's coming with your number, but okay, we won't discuss that now.
I became a councillor in order to be I'm losing my words now, democratic, and represent the people of Priory who voted for me. And one of the ways they do that is by me asking questions of the representatives around this table. Now, you, for some reason, since you've been in that position, have done your damn best to stop questions.
I don't think
and
so.
You're doing it right now.
Your opinion, Councillor Taylor.
Opinions are like backside, everybody's got one. All I'm asking the chairman is, am I allowed? I have some very, very, very important questions for the Breckland councillors. The last time I tried to get them in, the German chairman stopped me. And she bombed my chippy. I would like to be able to ask those questions tonight because I thought it was on the agenda, but it's been manipulated slightly, potentially by the clerk.
I love your accusations and that they're in
If I'm wrong, I'll apologise.
So that's fine. If you want to make accusations about me in public, that's entirely up to you, Councillor Taylor. But I think that we can produce the email trail that came from a fellow councillor asking for that agenda item. And all I did was put that agenda item.
As an elected member of the town council, am I allowed to change the rules to ask the Breckland councillors questions about things that's happening at the Breckland level on this agenda item or the next one? That is my question to you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm quite happy to answer the question. The general answer is yes, but you have to accept, councillor, that when you've asked the question, there is no requirement on any one councillor to answer you if they don't wish to. They're not obliged to. You do the questions, it's up to them how, if at all, they answer them. I have got a request from Councillor Wright here. I'm going to invite Councillor Wright to see if he can help you along in the way. So take him now, you've had 4 goes. So
I haven't asked the question yet though, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor, you've had 4 goes, that's now 5. It's Councillor Wright's turn now.
If I may just try and add some clarification to this matter, I feel that you've been asked to ask your question under 57121, reports from the County District Council. So you have your opportunity to ask those county and district councillors. 57221 is a separate agenda item which was installed at the request of Councillor Robinson with a view to arming the councillors with the questions so they can find those answers in advance. So I believe we're still on 5721. You have your opportunity to ask the questions of your Breckland councillors at this point.
It's just a request for the chairman, if you could organise with the clerk that could be on there, so we've got clarity there, the way we've got the clarity underneath, and then we wouldn't have spent the last 10 minutes discussing this. But if we could just put on 57121 and questions to those representatives, that would have stopped all this. And I still have a question, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman.
I think the idea of the other item, question 571, yet agreed. Question 572 invites you to write so that you may get a considered reply. I think you're on dangerous ground, if I may say so, if you tell us that you haven't got time because you're a working man to do your job as a councillor. That's probably not a wise thing to say. You're invited to make written requests for information so that councillors can attempt to find the answer. You have yourself served on Brecon Council. You know that it's not possible as a councillor to take part in every committee and every decision. The decisions are made, I'll continue. The decisions are made by not the councillors sitting in the seats that you and I occupy, but by the cabinet. If you write asking for information, you're entitled to a written reply. If you ask for information on the spur of the moment, you may not get it, particularly if the councillors around the table feel, pardon me, that they have insufficient information to help you with the question.
I don't know what changed, Mr. Chairman, but when I was a Brecon councillor, some people around this table would ask me a question at this forum as a Brecon councillor. If I didn't have the answer, I would say to them, at the next Brecon council, I will bring that up. So why we've got into this position all of a sudden that asking questions they may not be able to answer because they're not on that committee, I don't know where this has come from. In fact, it's quite ludicrous. All I want to do is ask my Brecon representatives a question as a town councillor, and I haven't got time to put it in writing this time of the year. I could invite you to come and run my diary for me, however, I don't think I could afford you. I just want to ask a question of the Brecon representatives.
Thank you for your comments. If anyone wish to make any further comment to Councillor Taylor about his comments?
I haven't asked a question yet.
I'd love to hear the question. The preamble's been really nice, but I'd like to get to the meat and cheese veg, please. If you're going to ask a question, ask a question. If not, stop posturing, please.
I'm waiting for the chairman.
You're not waiting for the chairman. You were invited several minutes ago to ask a question. What you've done instead is to make statements.
I can ask a question.
You were asked the best part 10 minutes
This council has always known how slow, thick and stupid I am. So I will apologise again for being slow, thick and stupid and not being on the upcake that you'd give me permission to ask a question, or I would have been in there like Flynn, Mr. Chairman. However, the question to put you all out of your...
invited under item 572 to ask a question.
Just let me talk, Mr. Chairman. Stuart, can I ask the question? Right, I don't know if the Brecon councillors are aware, but there was a gang of entrepreneurs in this town who wanted to buy the boat that recently went from the river. And they were putting in their own money. They were going to turn it into a nice little afternoon restaurant and cafeteria doing cream teas. And in the evening, the plan was to turn it into a nice quintessential English pub called the Stupid Boy, after the picture of Pike, which was just behind it. They were going to do all the work themselves and they were going to run it for the good of Thetford. The representative of that body went into an auction and was bidding, from what I've heard, against a couple of people. One was Mrs G, one was Mrs F. Mrs F won, and I've been told that it was £26,000 of taxpayers' money was paid by Brecon Council to buy that boat. I'm just trying to find out from, because I'm working that hard, did Brecon pay £26,000 of Thetford taxpayers' money on the boat? And also, did they pay money on the crane to move it? And my question is, for some of the people I represent, is who knew about it on Thetford Council? I didn't know about it, but as I've said, I'm too busy. I haven't even been checking the emails at the time. But there are some people not happy with the fact that our taxpayers' money in Thetford moved that boat without anybody having a chance to make it a going concern. The rumour going around I've heard is that the chairman of Brecon Council thought it was an eyesore. Now, if I was privy to the amount of money that he potentially can get out through his committees, I'd move things. I just want some answers to the questions. How much did it cost and why did they move it, and who did it go through and how much did Thetford know about it? And that is why last time, when you wouldn't let me speak, Deputy Chairman, I said I smell corruption. And may be stupid, I may be wrong, please let me know. But I want to know, can we have our money back, please?
Councillor Burrito had a hand up some time ago. I then got the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Jamie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a quick comment regarding this. This is not the first time that the debate kind of gets off the tracks in this council, which is unfortunate because we all ought to be much more productive if we've managed to really find common ground and work together rather than constantly bickering, to be honest. So that's just my opinion on the matter. I do have a point regarding what Councillor Wright mentioned about the item on the agenda and Mr. Taylor was going on about. I do agree that having some questions in advance for the Breckland and County Councillors is a sort of an advantage, gives them time to prepare some answers from some feedback from the meetings they attend on those committees and bring it back the information to this council, particularly councillors like myself that don't sit on those places, like to know what's going on in the background, and it's useful in that matter. On the same level, there is an advantage to have open debate and being able to ask questions on the spot. We get elected to pose questions on behalf of our residents, and in questioning is a way of creating discussions, hopefully healthy discussions. And getting some information up and getting solutions that work for the best of the community and work for everybody else. So I understand getting questions in advance. I think there's an advantage point to that. I also see the point that Ms. Taylor, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Wright were making, that a degree of flexibility to be able to ask questions is beneficial. However, I also understand that those issues have to be relevant to this council, and I understand that Councillor Taylor's concerns sometimes are for issues or matters that far exceed the capacity of this council. And I think that's something that being slightly frustrating, or at least from my point of perspective and opinion, that's been slightly frustrating everybody sitting at the table and creating this tribulation and obviously making things difficult and making the conversations harder for everybody. And I ask that there is some common ground for everybody. I mean, we are all here representing our community, we're all here with the best intention to reach some common ground for everybody. And can we make it so that there is a middle ground, that we can still have those questions in advance for the councillors, get the councillors opportunity to respond if they wish to. So as I understand that they are not obliged, as Mr. Chairman mentioned. But if there's questions coming up, that we have the freedom to pose them rather than spending, and I know I'm rambling here, I'm nearly done, rather than spending 10 minutes asking permission for a question, that we have the liberty to ask the question and then be understanding enough to accept that the councillors may or may not want to answer that question and then leave it at that. That's my proposal, that's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go on to the Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Councillor Barretto. I think you've summed up all of our sentiments, to be perfectly honest. In relation to the vote, yes, Breckland brought it. Yes, Breckland removed it. Yes, the ward members were aware, and yes, the ward members were in support of that. Yes, I was aware that there was a band of entrepreneurs that were interested in it. I heard about that afterwards. I'm sorry you didn't get to engage in your business venture. However, what I would say is that feedback repeatedly from the public has said that they felt that that boat was an eyesore. Yes, it was fantastic when it first opened. Yes, it could have been an amazing asset. But the fact of the matter was that in open market, at an auction, Breckland put in the highest bid and Breckland removed it. And I, for one, am very glad, and I know there are several residents, many residents, who have spoken to me who are very pleased that that is gone and that it has opened up that river corridor. It's taken away the flotsam and jetsam that has accumulated there. It looks beautiful and we can see our town bridge. So I don't have the exact figure to cover all of your questions. I don't have the exact figure, I apologise, and I'm happy to find those exact figures for you, but I think I've answered all your other questions.
Thank you very much indeed. I've got Councillor Jeremy, followed by Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of points, please. Firstly, Councillor Taylor, I think it's just important that I point out you're not the only councillor that works. There are several people around this table who have a day job, and still find the time to engage in constructive debate at committee meetings, read their emails and occasionally send some too. This is not the forum for holding your Breckland councillors to account. You don't have to wait until the last Tuesday of the month to raise a query. You can ring us, you can email us, you can invite me for a coffee. I'm perfectly happy to meet with you 2 metres apart, if you may, to discuss all sorts of issues. You don't have to come to full council. It would be far more productive to have an ongoing dialogue and for you to ask queries. As Councillor James has said, I have had a number of people contact me about the boat. I was one of the people that as soon as it went up for auction, I sent the link to Breckland and said, please consider buying it. It is an eyesore. If you add up the amount of time and money spent paying Breckland officers to deal with licensing, environmental health issues, antisocial behaviour issues, all sorts of other things over the last few years, we probably won't save money, but we'll be fairly close to it by the fact that it's gone, in my view. They have spent money purchasing it, and they did spend money on the crane, but they hope to get some money back from resale. So what the final cost is to the taxpayer, I don't know. But we will be finding out. But will it be a figure that I think represents value for money? Yes, I do, frankly, and I'm perfectly content that we bought it, and I commend Breckland for doing so. I'm intrigued to learn that there are entrepreneurs out there interested in buying the boat as it was. The one thing we have in Thetford is no shortage of buildings needing regeneration. So I encourage you and others to look around Thetford Town Centre and elsewhere and buy somewhere else, and I'd encourage you to do that. The boat's not the only game in town. Thank you.
Very much. Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is about the 572. I did, when I got the email from the Deputy Town Clerk about support, like submitting a question before, I did turn around and say, no, I don't agree with that. But the Town Clerk obviously come back and she gave me the right information, because I just put these blinkers on and thought, I'm not doing that. So I've got to thank the Town Clerk for steering me in the right direction on that one. And I have to say, I second what yourself, Deputy Town Clerk, Deputy Mayor, sorry, and Councillor Jeremy said about the boat. The amount of residents, and they're more elderly than the younger ones, that have said it looks so much nicer that they will go down and sit with Captain Mannering and look through. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brayden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, as the other Breckland ward member for the area, I was informed that the boat was going to be bid for, and I must admit, very much as the other two, thought, oh, good, because all the communications that I'd ever had were anti. I'd had nobody come and say to me, please save the boat. One thing I would like to point out to Councillor Taylor is he keeps saying that Thetford taxpayers paid for it, that Thetford taxpayers lost their money. I don't know if you're aware of how our democracy works, but we are a town council and we take in precept that we spend to run our bit of the town. All the taxpayers pay their bit in so that they can have what happens in this town. When we move to a Breckland level, exactly the same thing happens. Every single person in Breckland is the taxpayer, and what Breckland Cabinet decided to do was to use some of their total income from all the taxpayers in Breckland to the benefit of this town. And before they did it, they asked the ward members, who also work, to give them their opinion on what they felt that their residents would like. And in all cases, our residents said it was a flipping eyesore, it was time it was got rid of, and thank you very much. So yes, you are absolutely correct, but you're not correct in that it was a Thetford taxpayers' bill. It was the whole of Breckland spending money in our town for what they believed to be beneficial to our town centre. And the ward members, both sides of the river, actually agreed. So that was what happened.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 quick points. For the sake of clarity, can we have then the information about when the boat, how much was the value of the boat purchased for? So circulating an email to the remaining of the councillors for the benefit of Councillor Taylor and everybody else, so everybody has access to the same information. As well as soon as they know what they intend to do with the boat, because there are a lot of questions and the public is being asking those questions. I've been here on the grapevine and I've been asked as well what happened to the boat, why did Breckland bought it, what they intend to do with it. So the public is kind of looking forward to have some sort of development and what's going to be done with that. Sorry, seems my ring has flew over. So a bit of information about whenever there's a decision of what they intend to do with it, how much money can be recouped from a sale of it if the Breckland decides to indeed sell it, and just have that information passed around for everybody to see would be beneficial. The other point I wanted to make is, Councillor Brahim, is that I think the difficulty is that the public in themselves has a lot of misconception about what is continuing, and this is an old thing, it's nothing new, but it continuously has misconception about what's the duties of the town council, what's the duties of the Breckland council, what's the duties of the county council, and who's holding which purse, basically, for which purpose. And I think a lot of the public seems to be a bit wound up, and there is a majority that agrees that the boat should have been gone. There are a small group as well that says no, we should have been staying there, particularly if it's been paid by the taxpayer. They don't see a justification for it in their eyes. So there are views from both sides of the border, and that's fine as long as the majority agree that the boat should be gone. Then the boat was removed, and lovely, the majority wins. But for people that doesn't agree with that, they see it that they pay their council tax. How it gets broken down and who gets which proportion and how it gets spent, they're not really in tune with how that works, basically. So from the public's perspective, my taxes have gone to a pocket. How that pocket gets divided, they don't know. Ultimately, if the boat gets bought with the money from the taxpayer, somehow that comes from the purse from which they contributed to. I think the difficulty here is trying to make the public aware of who's responsible for what and where the money actually goes. I know there's a lot of leaflets, there's a campaign from Breckland Council to try to break that down and show this is what Town Council does, this is what Breckland does. But this misconception will continue to go on for the majority of the time. This is not something new, and unfortunately this got to do with information. The more information we pass on to the public to who's doing what with what money, the clearer and more transparent the things will become from my point of view. But yeah, if we can have the values and the final destination of the boat and the amount we can recoup from it as an information passed on to everybody would be beneficial from the Breckland councillors. Thank you.
Just a quick one. I'm sure if I went to the ratepayers in Dereham and Swaffham and told them that the potential rise in their precept is so that councillors Jeremy and councillors Brahim can pay to move a boat in Thetford, they'd be very, very happy. Good luck. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very much. Jeremy.
No, I just wanted to respond. I know you want to move on, Mr. Mayor. There's a chap in Dereham, Harry Clark, is a colleague of mine in the Labour group. He said to me, my God, how on earth did you get Breckland to spend some money in Thetford buying that boat? I want them to buy a shop in Dereham. It's a major issue. We're not going to please everybody all of the time, Mark. I appreciate that. But, it has resolved the issue.
Thank you very much, colleagues, for your enormous attention on this issue. I think we can safely move on to 572, responses from county and district councils to written questions from separate town councils. I'm kind of hoping there aren't too many of these.
I think you're going to be very happy, Mr. Mayor, because I can confirm that I haven't received any. However,
at all.
We did, in the excitement of the meeting, miss out the fact that we had prompters, Councillor Dowling, that she could give her district report and I will be in a lot of trouble, and she will bash me over the head when you leave if I let you not let her read her report after I constable.
As you can see, Councillor Downing, I have to have a good deal of support at this end of the table, and thank you, Town Clerk. Councillor Dowling, the floor is yours. Can I take the opportunity to remind everybody that there appears to be one microphone that's in the middle of the room. If you're a little bit closer, Susie, you might find you're recorded better.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that in my role of governor, I attended the open day at the Damara School and met with parents and children, many of whom had been waiting for several years for a specialist educational provision. And the school is now up and running and has reached the optimum number of pupils, and I think it's going to be a marvellous asset for Thetford. I also took part in the LGB monitoring visit on the 25th of November. Another casework that I've been doing recently was regarding the former garage on the Brandon Road. I've been contacted by several residents. They were concerned that the site had been used for car washing, etc., without the requisite permissions. I visited the site and there was evidence of car washing and other things being done there. There was foam and water and such like. I did contact planning enforcement, and the site has been visited by a planning enforcement officer, and consultation with the owner and their legal advisors has taken place, and they have agreed to stop any further works and use of the site with regards to the car wash opened. And a planning contravention notice has been served on the landowner in order to establish the full facts and assess if there has been a breach of planning control. And we now have to wait 21 days for a response to that. But the works of the repair and maintenance to the car showroom and the ancillary workshop are not considered development and are allowed. So, but that is being monitored. The owners have agreed to all the requests and are currently working with the council to resolve the issues. I've informed the residents of the current situation. And I would just like to say that I attended the Remembrance service on Sunday, and I thought it was very moving and was very well organised, so well done to everybody who took any part in that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I've got Councillor Brame and then Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just actually like to thank Councillor Darren. I have spoken to several of my neighbours who were very pleased with the interaction they got with you, and it kept them off my front door for a little while. And I'm keeping an eye on it for you, because obviously that is opposite where I live. As you say, they didn't actually ever get to do any car washing. The only water that pushed about there was the fact that they had put some pipes in and they were testing. But there is an environmental question, which is why they didn't get planning permission in 2018. So yes, we will watch with interest, but as I say, from behalf of my neighbours, they thank you for what you did, and they were quite surprised that it wasn't a town council matter. And I went through it with them that planning is at a different level, and they did ask me when I saw you at district to say thank you for what you did. Thank you for doing it. Thank you.
What a gentleman, faced with a choice between facing the microphone and facing the speaker. He chose to face the speaker.
Every time.
Very much indeed. Setting an example. Whether you'll be heard is another matter. I've got Councillor Crawford next, please.
Chair. Yeah, I'll stand this way, that way not please anybody. No, just on the school you mentioned, can you give me a bit of clarification about where that's located and everything?
Where it's located?
Yes, please.
Yes, it's in Bridge Street, well, sort of between Bridge Street and the other side, the yard behind. So the main entrance is in Bridge Street.
Next to the grammar school.
Next to the grammar school. Okay, thank you very much.
apologies for keeping you waiting in that way. I think we can now say, colleagues, that we've dealt with both 571 and 572. So we move on to item 573, request for council leave of absence. Colleagues, you may well be aware that matters have moved on since this agenda was set. I'm going to invite the town clerk to make a statement if she wishes to do so, and then you'll see the reason for my saying that, if indeed you don't already know. So over to you, please, town clerk.
I have sent out an email this morning to all councillors reference this, and I fully appreciate that maybe not every single chance to have a look at it. So what has happened is, unfortunately, through ill health, Councillor Colin Burnett has not been able to attend any meetings on behalf of the council. Now, this isn't just committee meetings, this is outside bodies, an example being like, you know, Dennis went to the committee meeting at Charles Borough, so he has been unable to attend a meeting in any capacity for the council for 6 continuous months, and is therefore automatically disqualified as a councillor. I have spoken to Colin, mainly to check on his health and well-being, because unfortunately he is still seriously ill, and I'm sure that the council will send their best wishes to him. And speaking to Democratic Services at Breckland, what happens now is that we note that his position as a councillor has been terminated. I write a formal note to Breckland to say that this has happened, the council has been informed, it's been noted in the meeting, and therefore they will produce a vacancy notice that will go out, because this now becomes a casual vacancy. This means that the public get the opportunity within 14 days, excluding weekends and public holidays, to contact Breckland District Council as to whether they want a by-election or not. And if 10 residents of Vicarage Road Ward, and I have sent out what roads that covers, go to Breckland and say that they wish to have a by-election, then a by-election will be called. If there isn't that request, then the council has the option then to bring it back and either go for co-option or to agree that we go for by-election. The last decision made on the last casual vacancy was to go for election, but obviously 6 months has passed since then, so the council can review that decision and change it should they choose to. But the first thing that has to happen is it has to have a vacancy notice go out, and we have to wait to see if 10 residents want a by-election.
Thank you very much indeed for that statement of fact. So as you see, there is no decision to be made, but I will invite comments should you wish to make comments about it, starting with Councillor Crawford and then Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just 2 things to clarify. One, I'd like to pass my,
best wishes
to Colin and everything on there. But the number 2 is, when does the 14 days start?
As soon as they publish the vacancy notice.
Right.
So I don't
best
know
answers you can give.
I guess it depends when Breckland do it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarification, you said 10 residents.
10 residents. There has to be 10 residents of the Vicarage Ward. Have to say that they want a by-election.
Yeah, that was my question.
Yes.
It's not 10 residents of Thetford.
No,
it is 10 residents of Vicarage Ward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I do see Colin quite often, and he does look very frail, and he is really quite ill. I just wondered, Mr. Mayor, if, for instance, is it a case where maybe he didn't get his application for absence in early enough?
Yes.
Therefore, he's probably been unfortunate to be disqualified. Is that what is the situation? Just for my own personal clarity.
The thing is, as well, is I'm not actually sure, because I don't know a great deal about the personal situation, is how well he was in order to actually achieve that.
Okay.
So I have spoken to him, and actually he is in a position to stand again should he choose to, whether that be in by-election or co-option. So that opportunity is available to them.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. We're going to move on now to 574. Pardon me. The approved precept for the year to come, 2022-23. And I invite the Chair of Finance to lead on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, thank you all very much for last month where you approved the operational budget. We have now received the tax base figure. Thank you, Finance Officer. Oh, yes, that's the right terminology. From Breckland Council, which tells us effectively how many properties and what bands will pay council tax on that. So we learn how we set the precept. So taking that information in, and based on the decision that yourselves made at the last meeting, the impact of that decision is that there is a 2.82% increase in the precept compared to next year, compared to last year. The caveat that I would include with that is that last year, this council chose not to increase the precept. So effectively, that 2.82% is over 2 years. If we take the current situation with the rate of inflation rising from 3 to 4%, we've actually done a cracking job in terms of managing our finances. And if we put it in real hard term cash numbers for a Band D property, so bearing in mind that bands A to C will pay less and E upwards would pay more effectively, we are looking at an increase for the whole year of £3.54. And having done my shopping in a local German supermarket, because there are others available. There's two German supermarkets in town. I didn't name names. That increase is less than a 900 gram pack of diced chicken for the whole year. So I really wanted to put it into those simplistic terms, and that is on a Band D property. Obviously, the increase will be less for those on Band A to C, and would be more on those Bands E and higher. So the recommendation is that we request that this council approves the proposed precept for 2022-23, and I'm proposing that.
Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Wright. Excuse me again. Are there any comments to be made? I think Councillor Braden is the first time they see it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Couple of bits of clarification, please. Breckland has given us the numbers on the amount of houses that are in Thetford, so how that affects the precept. Does that include the bit that is currently in Croxton? And if it doesn't include the bit that's currently in Croxton, where is the money from those houses going to go? And as it is going to be part of Thetford, do we have to wait for that to happen before we can have anything to do with that precept money? Because it appears to me that some smaller councils are going to do very nicely, and our residents are going to have to not have a pack of diced chicken this year. That may well have been the difference between a Christmas lunch and no Christmas lunch. It's ever so simple to bandy these numbers about. But I'm a little bit concerned, and I'm also concerned with the way that this agenda has been put out, because we are now being asked to charge our residents more on precept, which is for the running costs of this council. and after that, we're going to be asked not to charge a small charity for the use of our offices, which is a cost to this council. We're also going to be asked to fund some parish partnership deals at £20,000 and £30,000 a go, and I'm just wondering, because none of those are actually budgeted as such. My question is, are they coming out of reserves? Because if they are, could we not possibly, instead of having a footpath for a few people, it's very right to say that you can't walk around there in the winter without your Wellingtons on, but good God, how many people freeze their what's-its off to walk around there in the winter anyway, when we could possibly have taken this precept increase out of the same reserves that somebody may be saying is going to happen for these parish partnerships. It's ever so easy to spend it, and we don't seem to be thinking of our residents, especially in this year. So many of them have had a bad year, not only financially but emotionally and everything else, and it just seems to me that perhaps if we'd have got all of those bits sorted out prior to discussing the precept, it might have been a better order for this council to do. Thank you.
Do you want me to start on that? If you really want to, I'm ready to go. Okay. I would just say about the order of the agenda, in that the parish partnerships comes out of the does come out of reserves, and therefore doesn't affect the precept.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We're going to spend the reserves and not.
But there is a generational responsibility, and if you keep spending the reserves to fill the precept, at some point we're going to have to have a very big precept rise, because we're not going to have the reserves to pay the precept. So.
But you're not going to have the reserves to spend them on a path.
No, so I think it's a case of balance.
If I may, so in terms of the parish partnership, that is a separate agenda item. I acknowledge absolutely what you've said, and obviously that decision is for this council to make, and we wouldn't want to preempt anything. In terms of, we're going to number of houses, so I'll try and remember them all as we go through. So number of houses, obviously that figure is not the total number of houses in Thetford, it is the number of houses that are able to pay, and I use the word able because I think that's the most appropriate word, to pay council tax. Obviously there are some families that are in difficulty, and there are the support mechanisms in place for that. In terms of the boundary and residents that are in other areas that will be coming into Thetford as of 2023, that is as of 2023. It's something of a perennial discussion that I believe has been had in the past regarding other properties that are in Croxton or other villages that are closer to Thetford, and perhaps, how should I put it? It's not a wall, it's a road separating them from those village hubs. Those residents in those areas will pay to their local parish council what that parish council decides to charge their precept at, and obviously that will reflect the services that they receive. But obviously we're always mindful that Thetford is a market town. We do draw in from the hinterlands, and that's part of the benefit of also being part of Breckland, that we can draw in from that as well. In terms of the actual increase, I would remind this council that we did not increase the precept last year. So over 2 years, we are proposing to increase the precept by less than the rate of inflation. And that, I believe, has been through prudent management, innovative thinking, and thank you to the staff for
for their support, and certainly you yourself will know, Councillor Graham, the challenges that have been faced within the personnel side of things. And it is our staff, one of our greatest assets, because obviously the buildings are considerable as well. Those fabulous assets that we look to retain and continue to deliver services for our community and our residents. So in that respect, I completely agree. I don't want to put up taxes. I hate putting up the precept. However, in the context of 2 years, I think we've done quite well to bring it in under inflation.
The Deputy Town Clerk to speak on this item.
If there is anything that the Deputy Town Clerk and Finance Officer would like to add, I'd be very grateful.
I think I've got information. Can I, Councillor Burrito was before you.
No, can I just be excused? I've been sitting here a long time. 2 minutes, just carry on.
Would it be helpful to ask you, Deputy Town Clerk, if there's anything that you would like to add at this moment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What we have tried to do is to separate out the process of doing projects which are long-term and involve a bit more long-term financial strategy to the precept. And what we've stuck in previous years is we've done these long-term strategies, we've done all these project budgets, and they have not been achieved. So this year what we've done is focused on the precept, try to get that right, and then we can do a little bit more long-term financial strategies around the projects to ensure that we can actually do them a little bit later on in the year, where we have a little bit more certainty and we end up with more realistic budgets. That's it, thank you.
I'm sorry to have kept you waiting, Councillor Burrito. It's you now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not a problem. I'll wait my turn as I should. Now, a question and a comment. One question for the Finance Manager, Deputy Chair. Can you just remind us what's the percentage of precept that was raised on the previous years? Because you say it's 2.8, proposed to raise now, hasn't been raised last year, so it was stagnant for a while. What was the percentage that was raised prior to that? What was the increment? Just for the point of reference, please. Just as for a point of comparison, if that's possible. Would it help if while I let you look for information, I make my comment, and just to speed up the meeting? I wouldn't want to hold you too long. I think, well, last year we were able to hold the precept, and that's great. Councillor James said as the equivalent to a pound of diced chicken. But in the way I see it, is for most people that struggle nowadays, money matters. And that was very clear when there was issues nationally regarding universal credit. From the moment they increased it £20 per week to help families, and then by the time they decided they might not take £20 away from those families, it threw hundreds of families in households under the poverty line. So from my point of view, I'm not criticizing the amount, I'm just saying money matters. To a lot of people, £3 is 2 or 3 meals in a week. That's just my perspective. It's fine and dandy to look at things from a point of privilege if you're not lacking, but for families that struggle to get £1 or £2 a day for a meal, that makes a lot of difference. Also understand that some families that are under the poverty line, there are systems in place to support them with the council tax and everything, but it might make a difference to others. Just a point, just something, food for thought, basically. Like I said, I'm not sure about the percentage the increment was before, so I'd like that for point of comparison. And just to finalize, I'm not trying to offend anybody, I'm pretty sure when I finish this meeting, I go back to my constituents and to other people, and they're going to say, oh, you were discussing the precept, so they're going to raise our taxes. And I'm saying, yes, it's a possibility, we were discussing that. And they say, very great, why don't they just sell the boat that they bought and put it on the reserves to cover those taxes? And why shall I tell my constituents then? That's my question to the rest of the council. Thank you.
We didn't buy it.
It wasn't me.
Yes, Councillor Boehm, I understand that, but that's what. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jeremy. That's what the constituents were going to ask me.
Enough.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Carry on. Carry on.
Councillor Jeremy has obviously responded on one of your questions. My understanding is last year, not last year, the year before, it was 3.8%.
3.8, okay. Thank you for the information.
Yeah, to the preset on bad deed property.
So, and then we stagnant for a year, and now we're proposing 2.8. Is that what the value is at the moment? Right. Thanks for the information, anyways.
So that's 2 increases in 4 years. Yeah, 2 increases, 4 years. In 4 years.
Right. So it's every second year.
Before there was no increase either.
So every second year there was an increase. Is that right? Right. Okay. Thank you.
We've got Councillor Hollis, then Councillor Crawford, then Councillor Jeremy. So, Councillor Hollis.
It's a well done really on the precinct. It's a lot lower than what I expected it to be. So well done to the finance officer and the chair. But can I just make a comment about something Councillor Breton said, was about the universal credit. There is a lot of people on this thing, as they are going short, but then people must realise that the £20 that the government gave them at the beginning of the COVID was actually told that it was a bonus payment and not a regular payment. It was just to get them out. So personally, I wouldn't have counted that £20 in my total pay. I would have. That's a lovely surprise. Yes, you could have a McDonald's tonight, children. But people have to remember that that was a temporary payment. It hasn't been removed from them. It was a temporary payment. But well done on the precinct.
Councillor Crawford.
Well, just a few comments. I'm not very often quoting things from support of Breckland or anything, but again, I'm going to have to. I find the system of getting council tax and housing benefit and everything quite confusing, because I was in a situation just recently where my money was cut drastically, and then they made me pay some more council tax and rent and everything. Well, I've just got that sorted out, and Breckland has put in operation. They have different things they can help individual people who are not very flush with money, and so I think putting this, we need to put this up, because we can't forever not increase our precepts. So I think we've done very well to keep it as low as we have, and Breckland will work very hard with you to try to sort out any problems you have with finances. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. That's very helpful. We've got Councillor Jeremy, then Councillor Burton, then Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A bit like Jane, I never actually like to put up council tax. I deal with people pretty much most days of the week struggling to afford various different things, and the last thing I want to do is to make it worse by putting up council tax. But I do recognise as a council we haven't raised council tax significantly over the last few years, and 2 relatively small increases in 4 years I think is good. Good value really for what we provide as a council. We still provide way over and above what an awful lot of parish and town councils, certainly in Norfolk, provide. Dennis has stolen my thunder slightly, because the town council share of your overall council tax bill is relatively minor. You know, the major players are Breckland, Norfolk, and the police commissioner. And Breckland did set up a hardship fund specifically to support people with council tax, recognising that increasingly now the burden to fund local council services is falling on local residents, not the government. Government's been reducing the rate support grant, therefore council tax has to go up unless you want to completely do away with council services. That hardship fund is still there, it's still available. I inquired recently. I would urge all councillors, if you know of people struggling to pay their council tax, that is just precisely what it is there to do. There is still money available. And also make sure people are paying the correct council tax. Last week a lady contacted me. She was terrified because she'd been sent a threatening letter by Breckland because she hadn't paid her council tax, but she was struggling to afford it. by the time I looked into it, she was exempt from council tax, and they've given her a rebate back to 2017, and she didn't know she was paying the wrong council tax. And I am very worried about the number of people who are paying, because frankly the paperwork is confusing. For those of us that deal with the household bills and whatnot, it is very confusing. So do what we can to make sure people are paying the correct amount. If you are concerned about people not being able to afford the council tax, the most important thing you can do tonight is to take Jane's comment earlier. Norfolk County Council are currently consulting on their budget for next year. The proposal within that budget is to increase council tax by the maximum possible, 3%. 3% to them is a lot more than 3% to us. It's an increase of about £50 for the year, on top of £50 for this current financial year, on top of £50 for the previous financial year. You're currently paying £400 a year more to Norfolk County Council over the last 5 years. I'm very pleased to hear that Roy's now concerned about the cost of council tax, because Roy voted to put the council tax up last year by £50 at Norfolk County Council. I voted against. That's an awful lot of packs of sliced chicken. I want to see council tax reduced as much as we possibly can, and there's a couple of things in there that we can take to help people to reduce their bill.
Thank you very much. I'm going to pause just for a moment before I ask Councillor Brito and Councillor Cannon to speak, because I think it's that magic moment when you have survived 2 hours and I have to invite you to consider whether you wish to continue. Is there any objection to the proposal that we continue the meeting? Congratulations on stamina. So over to Councillor Burrito again, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And now that the conversations are finally productive and amicably, why would we give it up at its best, right? So we shall carry on for a little longer. Just a point of clarification to Councillor Hollis. Yes, it is a national issue, but just to make it clear, £20 on universal credit, it was temporary. It was indeed. However, inflation is not temporary. And if we're going to look at things in the grand scheme of things, and as Councillor James said, okay, we need to raise our precept because cost of living is getting more expensive, inflation is going up, and we need to keep up with the times and increased cost. If we're looking at the other end of the situation for families, it has those £20 will be taken back, but inflation will not stop for them. It continues to increase for everybody the same. So it was just my perspective that things sometimes have to be looked in the grand scheme of things rather than from a narrow point of view. As Councillor Jeremy said, there is a lot of people that is mistaken with their council tax. That is indeed a fact, and I myself has helped a few people deal with them. They actually paying the wrong amount. Sometimes they're paying amounts that they shouldn't, or they just shouldn't pay altogether. And sometimes there's a lot of pressure on them to want them to pay those bills, particularly because they are aware that council tax is one of those bills that are one of their main bills that need to be paid. Otherwise, there's more hefty consequences if they don't. Rather than utilities, council tax is something that they can get bailiffs involved if the costs keep accruing and if they don't get paid. For a lot of families, I've seen a lot of cases where that happened, and more than the financial strain of it, sometimes is the stress and the despair that families go through because they are paying for something in the wrong manner or paying for something that money would be better off served for something else in their lives. And I think sometimes it's about getting people to check, and it is about putting the information out there, getting people to reach out for help. So that's my point from this, is that if people is unsure, if people is in a desperate situation where they find themselves trapped with a big bill, or they're not sure if they're paying the right one, there's the Citizens Advice, there's other agencies. Just reach out and ask for help, because sometimes it's a whole lot simpler and things can be sorted rather than escalating and letting people into sort of trapped into that they shouldn't be into. That's just for a matter of information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was just a quick one, really. I think from the Finance Committee, when we sat and started to talk about it, and the Chair and the officer explained, actually it's not just about inflation just because we want to pay it. Nobody wants to pay extra on their bills, but actually the council will be getting inflations from our contractors and everybody else that we have to pay So whether it's a builder, a contractor, anything, they will increase it. We've already you can already see it in the marketplace. You know, we had the trouble with cement and everything else, so everything shot up. And I think we've come in at a good price. Do I want the council tax to go up? No, because it does impact me. Can I apply for a council tax rebate? No, because there's 2 pensioners in my house. So, you know, you tend not to get it. But, as I said to my husband, it's either that or the council goes bust, because you can't carry on without increasing to get that back in again. So, and I think most people would understand that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wonder whether this is a time at which I might invite them to make a proposal.
I shall propose.
Sorry, Councillor Brave, I can't read my own writing anymore. On my apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I must admit I put my hands up to voting for a rate increase at Norfolk County Council last year, but I was under the official's misapprehension that they were going to spend it on education, they were going to spend it on the social people and social services, and 2% of it was on social services increase that was going to be ring-fenced. So yes, I thought they were important things and that people should. I will come back to the point that Councillor Beretta made, where she said, oh, wasted the money on the boat. We, as a town council, didn't have that as a decision. That was a Breckland Cabinet decision. We do have a decision here on the next agenda item as to whether we're going to spend 40 grand on a path that some people may want to use. Not everybody in the town is going to go around Watermeadow in the winter and complain that they're walking in the water. We, round this table, are going to make the decision that we are going to spend this council's money.
You are in danger of repeating yourself. And may I say, before we even get to the item on which you're speaking.
Well, all I'm saying is that we've got to make the decision on the precept.
Can we wait for the next item on the agenda then? Thank you.
Roy. We did have a proposal some little time ago. I think we've given it a good hearing. We did have a seconder, and we've still got Brenda.
No, I was going to second it, but you said it as you've got a seconder. Please get on with it.
Councillor Taylor.
Just on what Councillor Brave said there, I'd like to get rid of Breckland Council. Don't pay them any money. Get it here, give us the power, and then maybe we could make the boat to go. But, I mean, all the money that we're spending on councillors at a higher level, that could be going to the people, and we could be lowering the precept.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. We have had a proposal, we have had it's been proposed, we've had a seconder. Can I ask for a vote now, please, on whether we support whether we approve the precept as proposed for 2022-3? Those in favour, please. Thank you very much. Those against, please. Thank you. Are there any abstentions? Can I talk through them and point out that that was carried, and we're in a position therefore to move on to the next item?
Can I just ask Councillor James?
Yes. Seconded by Councillor.
Item 575, Parish Partnership applications. Consider and agree 2 potential applications for submission to Norfolk for the next financial year and to identify possible funding sources. Town Clerk, please.
So, through planning, each year we get asked to produce or to put forward requests for parish partnership projects that we feel are important to the town. And this year, the two that were put forward are the ones that were circulated down basically at Nunsbridges, Sword Meadow. I think it's, I know that Councillor Jeremy will talk about it because he has some ideas on some additional funding that could be available. But this is normally paid for and agreed for out of our reserve. And if I look at Anna, we can confirm that we put money into the reserve for parish partnerships. Yes? Into the projects reserve.
My understanding was that there was some unspent money in this year's budget that will be reserved at the end of the year.
Because it isn't for, so this is for 22-23. Now, also, we don't have to do both of those in year. If other council wish to do so, you could perhaps do one before the other. There is many options available, but I think possibly one of the most important decisions is as to whether we think it's a project that the council would like to pursue. Looking at Councillor Jeremy, because I know that this is something he's very keen. Would you like to comment, discuss?
Yeah, if I may. Thank you, Town Clerk. This has been discussed at planning and amenities. We've spoken a lot as a council about the river corridor in Thetford and how crucial it is to the town and townspeople, but also to visitors. And last year, you'll recall that we applied to the Parish Partnership for a new pathway connecting the Bladen Bridge to the Priory, which is still working its way through the complicated processes that go along. But that's scheduled for this financial year. This is a Parish Partnership application for the next financial year, but the deadline is in December, so we need to make a decision this evening. The area in question, if you know where the three Nuns bridges are, what I call the main bridge, which is on the Mill Lane side, and then you have the middle bridge. Someone's very helpfully put a map up there. Thank you, technical person, whoever did that. Those of you that walk into the town centre or along the river know that there is no pedestrian path connecting the main bridge close to Mill Lane through to Ford Street in the town centre. And if you want to walk that way, you have to walk across the concrete road bridge in the middle, and normally you're looking both ways at the traffic and sort of scurrying across before there are cars visible. And it is a safety issue, and it's been identified as such. And the Greater Thetford Partnership Community Subgroup, when they completed a walking and cycling study in Thetford, that was one of the top 5 areas where there is the issue of conflict between pedestrians and cyclists and cars, and we all know that. We also, as a council, put money into the Arlington Way path, connecting up at the back of the bridge through to the BTO. But for any of you that have been down to see the water buffalo, the pathway running parallel to the river along there is less than ideal. There is no pathway; it's mud basically where the breach is in the river. So the idea would be to carry that pathway along from the back of Arlington Way through to the Nunsbridges Road, and there to be a wooden pedestrian bridge across the middle river, for want of a better phrase, connecting up to the pathway on the other side, the main Nunsbridge at Mill Lane. Now, having got some prices from Norfolk County Council, that's too expensive in one go. As Roy's already mentioned, the Town Clerk has suggested, to complete that whole lot is too expensive. My suggestion to the Council would be to put in an application for the pathway that runs parallel to the main road and for the bridge. The bridge can be funded through other means, but Parish Partnership will fund, is eligible to fund the pathway element. That would address the safety issue on the road and help people to be able to navigate along the river much easier. I think that one on the costings is £30,000 would be the total cost, which would mean £15,000 from Norfolk County Council, because Parish Partnership, they will pay half, which means that there would be a contribution needed from the local council of £15,000. The way Parish Partnership works is you can get some money out of Norfolk County Council, but you've got to show your own money up first, 50-50. It means we can fund local priorities. It means they can get somebody else to pay 50% of the project. That's how it works. What I've suggested to amenities, and I think we're more or less happy, is we have got money in the budget each year now for £10,000 for the river corridor. We've approved it this year for the Fish Pass project with the Environment Agency, and it's currently factored into the budget for the future as well. So either with the underspend from the Fish Pass from this year being carried forward to reserves, or because this project is for the next financial year, by using next year's £10,000, that would be our match funding. So that I'm looking for Alan for a nod to make sure I've understood that correctly. But we've got the money within the budget. There's no additional increase required for it. If you're quick at maths, you'll realise that there's a £5,000 deficit, and I've spoke to Jane today. One little quirk that we weren't aware of is that as local members on Norfolk County Council, we get £10,000 each for local highways projects, and Jane and I funded various bits and pieces, and Roy previous to Jane. What's really interesting is that we can use our local member highways budget to add to the town council share, and then still get extra money from Norfolk County Council. So, correct me if I'm wrong, Jane, but I think what we'll do is we'll put £2,500 in each to the town council, so that'd be 15 grand from us, so we can extract the maximum possible from Norfolk County Council, their 15 grand. So that means there's no taking from reserves, it's factored into the budget. It means we don't have the 10 grand to fund on other river stuff, but actually this is a really exciting project for the river, and I think as a member of Amenities that's worth doing. So it's 15 grand from us, 15 grand. I would suggest, Town Clerk, that what we do is with the second bid is just put that to one side for now, because it is a significant amount of money. We need to do it in stages. I think the safety issue along there should be the priority, rather than let's make a nice pathway along the river corridor. That's a good ambition, but maybe for next year's Parish Partnership or the year after. There's also the confusion going on with the Fish Pass at the moment. Is it happening? Is it not happening? Can we put a pathway built in with the Fish Pass? Who knows? So let's just leave that to one side, but let's focus on trying to put a pathway along Nunsbridges Road and a new bridge, and that would be my suggestion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Let me take the start first.
Could I just add a little bit into there? If the council had the mind to do so, we could agree that both projects are projects that the council would wish to do, and one in year, and that we would put the other one as one of the projects forward for the following year's Parish Partnership, and that would give officers time to find the money to make that happen for the next Parish Partnership. I'm not saying that we can't have any more Parish Partnerships next year, but what it is if we know that's what is wanted, then we've got quick time to make the money available and to find that for the following year. So if you have a mind to do so, we could accept both, but only put one forward this year for actual completion.
We've got Councillor Crawford and then Councillor Penn.
Right. I'm greatly in support of the idea. I think it's a really brilliant idea, and we should go ahead with it. The accounting you've done is very imaginative accounting, so that's very good too. But my one concern about this is we're putting a wooden bridge in, which we suggested many years ago that we should do, put a wooden bridge in there to help pedestrian traffic. Are we taking on more and more projects that are going to end up costing us maintenance money? And if we are we going to, in the future, have to put precepts up to maintain these things? Because they're great to have, but we must take precautions to have the money to maintain them. Thank you, Jane.
Well, actually, I think Dennis stole me thunder a bit there, because mine was the same sort of thing. When we do parish partnerships, who ends up owning that piece of land that you've just, will it always remain in a parish partnership, so that when it needs refurbish? So I think there is a certain person in the room, they go business plan, but she knows what I'm talking about. And actually, we're not foreseeing, as Dennis was trying to say, right, we put in these lovely things. Actually, Are you then going to say every year we've got to put a little bit in for the refurbishment later on? I just think we need to be aware of what we're doing. I love the ideas, but I always think of the future. I'm a future person and not the in the now.
Could I just say that the actual asset of the path will remain a Norfolk County Council asset?
Right.
Norfolk.
Norfolk, because they you know,
So
like
they'd
the
have to-
Arlington Way, we don't pay for any maintenance on any of that. We won't pay any of the maintenance on the, it's gone up my head. Bladen.
Bladen is Bretland, isn't it?
So that will remain, it actually belongs to Bretland.
Okay.
So it remains within the asset register, it doesn't become ours.
That's all I
We've
needed
just
to know.
identified it as something that we think is important and therefore have put forward money to make it happen as opposed to taking over any ownership of it. The actual bridges, when it comes to that, we will do all that as part of the costing and that will be put forward.
Councillor Wright, please.
I just think I beg to differ in terms of the cost. I think because it's on our land, which is Ford Meadow, it does fall to us. Bladen Bridge is on Bretland land, and that won't be our responsibility going forward. But I think this one will be ours. But at the same time, I'm very much, if we don't do things now, nothing's going to happen. You know, we have to do these things and take them forward. It's all very well to keep moaning to people, oh, it'd be nice to do this, not to do that. We actually have to stand up and get these things done.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Councillor Cannon Crawford's point, because I think it's perfectly valid. Dennis will know, but perhaps not Brenda. At amenities, we've been debating a lot recently about street furniture, and if you add up the total number of litter bins and dog bins and benches and signs, you know, you're talking hundreds of pieces of equipment. One of the things that Nick and the team are doing at the moment, and it will take several months, is an audit of just how much we own, what state of repair it's in, so that we can properly budget for the future. And we are very conscious, I think, as a committee, that we have got to forward plan, because these things aren't cheap. I mean, a litter bin these days is about 500 quid. So we've got to forward plan. I would see the bridge that goes in as part of that street furniture mix, and we need to budget accordingly for that. The budget within amenities for street furniture is going up slightly in recognition of the fact that things are costing more. But we are looking after our stock an awful lot better and forward planning. A really good example of that is trees. So you'll know from your time as chairman of amenities that we put an awful lot of money as a council into the maintenance of trees that we've taken on. The bills for trees this year have gone down significantly because we've been so proactive over the last few years at maintaining them. So there are economies of scale and the ability to save money by looking after things properly.
Were you feeling appropriate to make a proposal?
Yeah, I'm happy with the town clerk's suggestion. I mean, we tend to always scratch around at the 11th hour for Parish Partnership. It would be unheard of if we could agree tonight for the next financial year. So let's set a new trend and get in there early. So I'm happy to propose that we do that. What sort of words that is, but
That the council decide to accept both projects as parish partnership projects, with the project A being the Nuns Bridges Path, put forward as this is parish partnership project. So we accepted both, but we put forward the Nuns Bridges partnership.
yeah, I'm happy with that.
So
I'll second
that's
it.
the proposal. Do we have a second, please?
Yeah, I'll second it, yes.
Are you seconding, Dennis?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Can we have a vote now, colleagues, please? Those in favour of the proposal you've just heard?
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No,
sorry, I missed that.
Thank you very much. I think I saw it. Those against, colleagues?
Sorry, I'm not for. Sorry, I missed it.
Two against.
Two against.
Are there any abstentions?
Jenny says she's for. She didn't know she got
Again in a moment. Are there any abstentions? Can I ask, please, for a show of hands again? Those in favour?
Okay, thank you. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
No, there's 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I've got Jenna. Jenna, your hand up.
Yes.
1, 2, 3,
No, 10.
Carried. Right, thank you very much, everybody. On 576, charge charities to the Lady Gentle Trust. This is an application for waiving the recharge of costs, and Councillor Wright, who as the chair of the Lady Gentle Trust, will speak, please.
Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, members who didn't attend the Lady Gentle meeting, you are all members of the board of the Lady Gentle Trust, so just to make you aware of that. This came about as a result of Brecon Green grant that we put together for the Lady Gentle Meadow, which is in the ownership of the Lady Gentle Trust. We didn't get the full amount. We got 5,000 out of the 7.5 asked for. As part of that, we needed to show some match funding to get that money down there. And what I put forward, which I circulated, I think everybody's had a copy of that bid that went forward, was matched funding time. So our volunteers who work down at Barn Common and elsewhere were included in there, and officer time to manage the project, which the Mayor and I went round with the countryside officer to identify things that could happen down there, such as repair of the railings, new trees, bits and pieces like that, which we do a little bit of management down there, but very little, as you've probably gathered over the years, and it's now time for us to do something with the environmental agenda will allow us to draw down these types of bids. However, for an audit trail, we do need to show that we as a town council are waiving the cost of our officer time to get that project going forward. So that's the main reason for the agenda item here, so that when our auditor comes to look at town council accounts, we have put it in writing here that you as a council are happy to put that officer time forward to manage the project. I did circulate the bid. We did put it in at £10 an hour. I then rated it for the officer time in question. So we're scheduling it for £4,000. So it may not come to that. It depends how much officer time is actually there. This was put together with a bid. As you know, some things take more, some things take less. But for an audit trail, we do need to have something mentioned here.
I'm not sure who's first, my apologies. I'll take Councillor Cannon next, please, and then Councillor Crawford.
Although I know a lot of work's gone into this, I have a problem. If I'm leasing a property as a town councillor, we've now outsourced our leases so that everybody's treated the same and equally. I now belong under the council to 2 trusts. Can I treat one trust different to the other? My conscience won't let me do that, because, you know, when I'm a trust on something, I believe in that trust. And I cannot say, I'm charging Staniforth, but I'm not going to charge this one. Although I love the idea, I just can't see how my conscience can let me do that, because to me, they're equal.
Thank you very much. Councillor Crawford.
I'm probably more in favour of doing it. Maybe I haven't got the morals like Brenda has. But the Lady Gentle Field has been in our care for an awful long time, and we haven't done. I've been on the council for quite a few years, and we haven't done anything with it for so many years. So I would love to see us do something to move it forward, so we can do something with the Lady Gentle Field. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Smith. As you probably all know, I've spoken in favour of this project about enhancing the existing environment of Lady Gentle and embracing the fact that, frankly, it is rather boggy most of the time. I was surprised about the new pond, because I feel that's introducing an additional environment. But the bid is the bid. I'm really sorry, I don't understand where that £4,000 is coming from
looking at the spreadsheet, I'm afraid, because I can see there's the expenditure side of things, the project cost, and then we have the funding by. So we did get the 7,500, didn't we, from, how much did we get from Brecon? So we got 5. So there's a 2,500 shortfall that we're looking at. Sorry, it's not often I get my maths wrong.
We can only do with what money we've got, so we won't do every element of that because we've not the funds to do that. So the bid will be curtailed, so some of those elements will be delivered.
But you are still asking for more to something that's going to be curtailed?
Potentially. I say what I've done, I put the bid in at the £10 an hour. I was then advised a bit at the bottom, £10 got the sheet there, to uplift it for the £25 an hour, and that's why it goes to the ceiling of £4,000. It may not come to that because we're not delivering as much, but for an audit trail, we need to show officer time is being diverted to this project. There is a couple of other bids in potential that some of these things might come through in other funding bids. But at this stage, all we're asking is that we have the officer time allowed to deliver this project as it's shown there. So you could reduce it down and say, well, you're not happy for him to spend 100 hours there, you're only doing 50 hours. But it's a ceiling, it's just something for an audit trail we need to show.
Would it then be appropriate perhaps to amend the proposal to read to approve an application by the Lady Gentle Trust to waiver the administrative and management charge relating to the Brecon Council Green Grant Fund to a maximum of, and then everybody's...
To a maximum of 4,000 I think would be a good thing, and we know where we are. That's why I costed it and sent the paper out in that respect.
I think if there's a tangible element, I think that potentially makes it easier for us all to understand. Apologies for the confusion.
So Councillor Wright has accepted that. I wonder whether we're ready to come to a decision about this. I can't, forgive me, I can't, I've got Councillor, I can interrupt myself without any difficulty at all. I'll finish the sentence if I may, and then, so what I'm going to do is first of all make sure that Councillor Wright's accepted the discussion that went on. And then what I wanted to remind her was whether we got to stage of finding a seconder for this proposal. I don't think we have a second. So, having said that, Councillor Hollis, please, and I'm not sure, possibly Councillor Jim.
Yeah, I was going to say, shouldn't I ask my question before the firsts and seconds, please? What I was going to say is I understand why the bid's gone in. I didn't obviously attend the meeting. I had a family bereavement. But I've been on the council now 7 years, and I've never been to a meeting of the Lady Gentle projects. There's never been a one in the 7 years I've been on here. So well, I understand what you're saying. Shouldn't there have been the clerk put in place, the treasurer or whatever? We're trustees, the town council are trustees to this. Then is there any independent trustees that sit on it? And then, and I must admit I'm a bit like Brenda on that one, is if you're trustees of two trusts, why you shouldn't be treating two trusts separate when you're thinking of, if Stonyford come to us and said about the town clerk doing work, the finance officer doing work, they get charged for it. So this is where I'm getting on. I understand why it's being done. I'm not looking at it negative, but I'm just thinking you've got two balls rolling here, and you're treating both balls separate, different.
Councillor Barito and then Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment. I think we ought to take trusteeship seriously because there's responsibilities as being part of any trust as members. I understand that. At the same time, I can corroborate Councillor Hollis' comment that nothing's been done and it's been sort of dormant for 7 years plus. I haven't been a councillor that long, clearly, but apparently there was no meetings. There was something that was on the passive, it was on the background, but it was dormant for a long time, if I can understand it. And now there's been this idea of actually doing something with the space and the location, and actually get on with putting some action, actually putting some substantial action rather than just talking about it and constantly going on and on about it. I think anything that can improve amenities for the public in Thetford can only be a good thing. And if that means that we have to sort of create a form of putting together the proposal and for the council to get the officers to contribute some time and get that approved, then let it be if that's what's necessary to get things rolling rather than expedite actions rather than just sitting on it for a very long time. I think how wonderful of us that now that we all sort of majority voted for the precept to be raised, going back to our constituents and actually say, yes, we raised your precept a little bit this year. However, you've got to get yourselves a new pass and a new bridge, and also an improvement in the Lady Gentle Medal for the amenities, for the benefit of all the residents to enjoy and have better conditions in the town you live in. Sometimes something's gotta give. We can't just keep taking without giving something. If we raise the precept, yes, there's inflation. At the same time, we need to do more. And if that means that we have to get the ball rolling quicker and actually get those conversations and wrap it up and say, let's take action rather than just question why it hasn't been done before. Can continue to ask the question, or we can get on and get it done and actually deliver something for the people of Thetford. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Wright, followed by Councillor Jeremy, and then
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to answer to Councillor Hollis's query, we were asked to look at this at amenities. Amenities were quite happy to take this forward. Unfortunately, it isn't their place to do so. It's Lady Gentle own the thing, so in order to apply for money, you need to do it through the Lady Gentle Meadow Trust. We called the meeting of the Lady Gentle Meadow Trust, which was held here, and the minutes have been prepared and will be circulated. And at that meeting, it was agreed to appoint the chair, to appoint the various bodies, to look for external trustees, to use some of the standing orders and things like that we've got already. So that is in process of happening, and the trust is looking to its procedures, and they will be evolved. We are early days because but they agreed at that meeting to look to put this bid in and accept the money. So the late gentleman has accepted the money, and obviously it's dependent upon being able to deliver it. As you know, that lady gentleman doesn't have any employees. It has nothing other than that one piece of field. If we compare to Standing Forth has tenants, has income, has obligations that carry on year in, year out. This is purely a project-related expense. And one would hope that when we have other things, it will be a project related. We're not looking to have an ongoing revenue cost going through the Lake Gentle Meadow. It's very much an enhancement that's there. We as a town council bear the cost of running that place already. So, this is, and it's not cash that's going out, it's officer time we're asking to be put forward. So I'm not asking you to put any more money in there, it's just possibly Steve may not be spending as many hours on Barn Common as he will be in Lady Gentle. So hopefully that clarifies the situation.
Yeah, thank you.
very much. Jeremy.
I won't add too much more, Mr. Mayor, because I think Stuart just tackled it. I've been here longer than you, Jenny. I've been here since 2008, and I've never been to a meeting of Lady Gentle Meadow. But rather than looking at this glass half empty, let's look at it glass half full. Thank God we are now looking at Lady Gentle Meadow, because we've been overlooking it for all those years. It's an absolute asset in Thetford. That may say Lady Gentle Trust up there, but it's us. We are Lady Gentle Trust, the town councillors.
I wasn't knocking it.
Yeah.
I was just asking the question of why we're treating one trust and another trust. But I mean, I understand what you're both saying.
Yeah. Well, I think Stuart's point is Standing Forth is a different kettle of fish. There's a lot going on at Standing Forth Trust. Once this project is done and dusted, there probably won't be another Lady Gentle Trust meeting for another decade, frankly. It's a field. Once we put a few bushes and a few trees in there and all the rest of it, it'll go to sleep again, probably. And therefore it's a different kettle of fish, and that's why I don't have any issue with it being two different things. What I would say is actually, let's be more glass half full. not only are we now actually looking at this issue, and we should have been looking at it a long while ago, we've managed to get money out of somebody else to help pay to look after our land. The bid that Stuart wrote, and I think we should say thank you to Stuart, £5,000 from Brecon Council for a start. The only contribution we're asking from Thetford Town Council is in kind, mainly from staff that we're paying anyway, and from volunteers that we have through the Conservation team. That's the in kind contribution. The hard cash is coming from others. So I'm really excited about this project. It is different to Stanleyfield Trust, but let's get it done and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James, and then Councillor Brown.
Thank you. I think part of my questions for Councillor Wright, and I think probably part of it's for the town clerk. So realistically, what is the timescale for the project? And is that timescale achievable in terms of officer support that we're looking to commit?
12 months.
I don't know. And that's because we haven't actually sat down and worked out what parts are going to be delivered and when. And obviously a lot of that will be about what volunteers and other groups that we can get in. We have had an email this week that there is corporate volunteers that want to come in and do some work with us as well. So I think it is, once I know what the plan is, then I'll be able to tell you. Obviously it's very seasonal as well, the work that we're going to be doing. Unfortunately, a lot of the plants and things that we're looking at are willow, and willow is more than happy to have wet feet all year round, so there's quite a lot that can be done there. The other thing is when we're looking at the officer time, you're quite right that this is a project-driven agenda item, so if there was another project, then they would come back and ask for the officer time for that project. But another important part that we haven't mentioned that actually Terry brought up in another meeting was it's important for us to record our time and those actual costs, because then when we go out for anything else, we have a baseline of costs of what's involved in doing those. So for us it is. But I would say that what we will do is we'll look at the plan, and it may well be that we have to consult with the chair of amenities, that maybe we may have to not do quite as many benches one month in order to have the town team working on that. And I think will be a give and take as to, we'll have to keep reviewing what the priority is, and therefore we will be delivering on that. So we'll put it into the schedule, all the work that needs to be done once we work out what it is. But as with all things, I can't say with certainty. We don't know what's going to happen in the next year. So I would say that yes, we can look at the work, but a lot of that will be dependent on our volunteers.
Councillor Brain.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Just a question, really. Environmental enhancement scheme. Wasn't this put together by a working group of the amenities people, or was it a working group of the Lady General Trust? When I got the minutes, that's the first I've seen about it. I don't know whether that's a good environmental scheme. I see things on there that I don't understand, and I just wondered where the discussion took place within this council, either as committee or Lady Gentle members, as to what we do with Lady Gentle Meadow. Because I just don't know where it was discussed or anywhere else. So it's just a question, that's all.
It was brought up through amenities at the start. It suggested that this Brecon Green Grant money was available, and why it would not be appropriate for Lady Gentle Meadow to try and benefit from some of that money. So amenities then said, will you write a bid? And I duly wrote a bid to fit with what the Green Grant wanted to fund. Previously to that, I walked around with the Mayor and our previous environmental officer to look at opportunities that were down there. So we were armed with that information and what potentially could happen down there. We've walked it with the new environmental officer. We put the bid through amenities and was discussed further once the bid had been written and submitted. We subsequently then got the grant awarded, and that was when we called the lady gentlemen a meeting to say whether we wanted to accept that money or not.
Councillor Burrito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I should say that we're actually being quite simplistic about it. If we look at it, we're just looking to make a record for other purposes, for tracing purposes, of the time that the officers of the council will put towards this project. If we look at it, there's a whole lot more elements to it that are not even coming to the paper. In reality, we ought to be accounting for the in-kind time the council took to write the bid himself. Obviously, we councillors don't get any payment, so therefore we can't convert that in-kind time to value, monetary value, in the same way we can convert the wages of the staff of the council. But there's a whole lot more effort going into this. It's been put into this to get the ball rolling. That is not even coming to the table. So I think we're being really simplistic about this and making the most with the money we have. And money we have is being given by Breckland, not even coming from the coffers of the town council. So we are benefiting of amenities in town without having to put much into it. I think and we ought to push this forward and get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We do have a proposal, colleagues. Could we now bear to have a vote? Can I suggest that we do bring this item to a conclusion? There's probably more that could be said, certainly by me. I think the best thing is to come to a vote. So I'm going to invite those in favour of this proposal to raise a hand, please.
No.
Thank you very much. Those against? Abstentions? 3.
Could we give a second?
No against, 3 abstentions.
The second goes to Councillor Jordan.
None. No. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. On to item 577, community engagement. To discuss and agree any consultation or media release required. The Deputy Mayor.
I think given the level of discussion that was rightly given to it, we should be putting out a media release in terms of the precept and following comments that have been made here tonight, and also the practice that we've undertaken before. It's not just about sharing what it's going to be, but actually what the resident of Thetford gets their bang for their buck, quite literally. So I'm happy to undertake that work with the finance officer if this council would like me to.
Thank you. Councillor.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm being a pain. Can we, because a lot of people have been asking us this question today, can we advertise the craft fair on Sunday? They keep seeing Santa, but they're not seeing the craft fair. So can we just plug that as well?
And the tea rooms.
Pardon?
And the tea rooms.
And the tea rooms.
This was asked by a member of the public.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Tom, did you hear that?
Yeah, I think the answer to your question, Councillor Cannon, is yes. Everyone prepared, happy to accept what's been proposed so far? In which case, thank you for that, and we'll move on to item 578, which is committee officers update. Do you have any committee officers update, Dan Clark, please?
I do. But it's good news. Yeah, just let that just sink in for a moment. It's good news, particularly Councillor Cannon is going to be happy. Because the work on the cemetery yard is starting tomorrow.
Oh, wonderful.
At last.
We'll all be happy.
In the winter.
In the middle of winter. The thing is the opportunity has come up. We've had people in today doing measuring up, and that work will commence. I've got to have an on-site meeting next, yes, still around, and we'll get a time scale on that. But we've managed to get squeezed in. So that's good news. Happy days.
Right, thank you very much indeed. That's great. Could I just check that Minute Secretary, have we got some items below the line?
We've got one item which is going to take 30 seconds.
Even so, we have to go through the process.
You have to read the declaration.
Item 579, colleagues, to exclude the press and public. Some of them might be thinking they've sat here long enough. To consider resolving that pursuant to the public body's admission to Meetings Act 1960, the press and public be excluded for any remaining items of business on the grounds that publicity would be prejudicial to the public interest by reason of the confidential nature of business to be discussed. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
After a vote, Mr. Mayor.
Have you just stuck a banner in the works?
No. Just,
Luckily you're
just
sitting
consider
down.